At the end of Mass Effect 3, the series was put in cryogenic sleep to avoid the backlash from the ending. 5 years later, the franchise has been thawed out. Who the fuck defrosted the series in the microwave? Everyone knows you use a goddamn oven. Today, we are reviewing Mass Effect Andromeda, and may God have mercy on my soul. Okay, the story of Mass Effect Andromeda is set 600 years after the ending of Mass Effect 2. Yeah, 3 doesn't matter, and with how the endings turned out, 3 will probably never matter. Oh well, in this game, many races have come together to form the Andromeda Initiative, sending tons of people light years away in cryosleep on giant ships called Arks to the Andromeda Galaxy. Sadly, upon reaching their destination, the human Ark makes the grave discovery that their first planet intended for colonization, named a Golden World, is uninhabitable, and will later go on to find all of them are uninhabitable in one way or another. That's where you come in. You play as 22-year-old Ryder, who is a member of who is the leader of the Human Pathfinder team, and your job is to explore new worlds, meet alien races, and generally spearhead the settlement process. So that is the setup to your grand space adventure, and as far as the general writing and characters, I've never ran into any lines that truly made me cringe or anything, but that was reserved for the lack of emotion and expression paired with said lines.
3, 4, 5. Right.
Pre-order now to get day 1 access to the Emotions DLC, free for a limited time. To be fair, the ambient dialogue is tons of fun to hear, and there is so much of it, it just makes the whole world come alive. Even on the ship, you can hear people talk over the intercoms constantly. But back to the general story, the game failed to get me invested, partially because despite talking about the perils the Ark was in, I never truly felt it. But more importantly is the fact that instead of playing your character, you play as Ryder. A character who has a preset family, history, and personality that weighs down the role-playing, and worsening this is the lack of interesting dialogue options. Most of the dialogue boils down to good guy option A, good guy option B, get more information, or end conversation.
All we wanted was to be self-sufficient. I offered to pay for the designs. They refused.
So you poisoned them.
And took all their business.
You know, I'd like to end this with as little bloodshed as possible. I mean, you're not completely in the wrong, just mostly. Can we maybe sort this out?
I won't let you get away with this.
Figured you'd say that. Kill them.
But the worlds are where this game excels at. They are amazing, each one different from the rest. Jungle biomes, vast deserts, icy tundras, and technological marvels to explore, all with huge maps populated with quests. The new races added into the game are hit and miss, all 2 of them. What the fuck? The Angaran were not my cup of tea, but they are an interesting kind of tribal race, and the first contact with them was awesome. They didn't welcome you with open arms or a basket saying, "Hi new invaders, would you like a gift basket before you enslave our people and steal our technology?" What the fuck? No, they had a military escort me and threatened me even when I pulled out my innocent old scanner.
Don't approach the crowd.
Awesome. And the Angaran squadmate has some genuinely fun dialogue. Then there's the Ket, which felt like generic enemy faction number 1, and their goals felt like a rehash/mix of previous game antagonists.
I'm what happens when the antagonists from Mass Effect 2 and 3 met at a bar and had too much to drink.
Now to give you the opinion of a man who's played the original trilogy. Okay, some people may say Mass Effect Andromeda is Mass Effect fanfiction, and I fully agree. But sometimes fanfiction can be fun. Ryder is inexperienced.
Hey, I didn't say dismissed or meeting adjourned or anything. Meeting adjourned. As you were.
But creates an opportunity to differentiate himself from the militaristic stylings of Shepard. Whether that's a bad thing or not depends on the player. The game is much more lighthearted than the original trilogy, with few shocking moments and even fewer hard decisions to make, compared to even the first game, where you have things like dealing with brainwashed innocents and a mission that can't be completed without losing a companion permanently. I'm all for happy endings, but this game fails to make the player earn it, thus cheapening the victory. But the fun one-liners and dialogue between squad mates happens much more often and feels less out of place in this kind of environment.
Can you even see through this snow? Trust me.
Follow the lights, Ryder.
A hardcore fan that enjoyed the militaristic feel will probably not like the direction the game took the series, but a person who enjoys what if scenarios like what if the Asari squad mate wasn't prim and proper and didn't care for traditions? What if a Krogan female led the race? What if a human had Asari level biotics? To summarize, as far as the story and writing goes, the overall premise is good, but the execution is all over the place, much like the rest of this game.
It'll be fine.
The gameplay of Mass Effect Andromeda is a 50-50 split. Like the rest of the game, good in some ways, but frustrating in others. The freedom of movement is a wonderful addition, allowing you to jump around, shoot while hovering, and dash to evade. The huge open world maps have tons of cool places to explore, and the questing, while mostly fetch, scan, and kill quest, push you to these different locations or at least having you pass through them. On one mission, I stumbled onto a Ket base that had stolen some of my people's technology without ever getting any quests saying that things had gone missing. Despite the open world missions being decent, with some standout quests, the real quality gunplay comes from the story and companion missions. These have a level of polish missing from the rest of the game, with gameplay moments like hacking robots to fight with you and spying on enemies with security cameras. This shows that while open areas lack a level of polish, that is because the details are spread out. In smaller scripted stages, the Mass Effect charm is in full effect. The unique powers you can bring into battle are fun, with each having their own cooldown so you can set up combos easily, but inhibited by a 3 power limit. To try to circumvent this, you can create presets with different powers in one profile. Profiles are essentially classes which grant bonuses to various stats, and 1 or 2 unique passives. This is great on paper but clunky in execution, with multiple inputs required to change between presets. This leads to another flaw of the game, and honestly, this is the biggest one in my opinion. The user interface is absolute garbage. You go through way too many menus to do anything, and critical information can be missing or worse, incorrect. Crafting is in this game, because it's fucking mandatory now, allowing you to make the various weapons populating the world out of raw materials you collect. And by collect, I mean slowly get drip fed even when you're mining a fucking planet. And you can add modifications to make them more interesting, though without proper descriptions on what some of the modifiers do, you can end up making very useless weapons. This is kinda garbage. Did I get a refund? Sadly, despite having a plethora of weapons and armor, you cannot customize your squad mates, making the only strategic choice involving your squad mates being choosing which squad mate you take with you and leveling up their abilities. Moving on to multiplayer, the Horde mode is back from Mass Effect 3. Every few waves you are introduced with an objective that needs to be fulfilled, either staying in the area for a period of time, eliminating key enemies, activating objects placed on the stage, and on the final wave surviving an endless horde of enemies till your escape arrives. Also, while this game is being updated, they're adding new objectives to the multiplayer mode, so keep that in mind. You can choose from many different classes to play, allowing you to somewhat experience combat with an alien's perspective, but aside from that, there's not much different from the single player. The 2 game modes do come together in the form of strike missions though. This little game in a game has you sending teams of NPCs on missions to get you mission funds that can be used on multiplayer content, and loot crates that you can use in single player. Some of these missions can actually be played in multiplayer as custom lobbies with special traits added to them, like no ammo crates or 500% bonus melee damage, and are really fun to experiment with. Speaking of experimenting, let's talk how the gameplay measures up to previous Mass Effect titles. The new dynamic cover system will be a hit or miss for some. Most of the time it works perfectly, but it only takes a small nudge for your character to stand up and expose themselves to potentially lethal damage. And while sticky cover would not have this problem, that would also limit what can be used as cover, and a little wonkiness is worth being able to use everything from a boulder to a couch to a slightly wider than normal lamppost as cover. Many of the abilities and classes transferring to this game have been enhanced, like Overload becoming a charge move, but some have become downgraded, like the Sentinel class Tech Shield becoming a passive that gives damage reduction when your shield is down. Even though the animation quality of this game has been put into question, the in-combat animations are very nice. The player now has a dramatic startup for Biotic Charge. When you use Energy Drain, the player actually yanks the electrical connection, conveying the idea of taking something from the enemy, and dear God, we actually have reload animations. Sadly, some of the more interesting abilities are missing, despite having a plentiful list building up over 3 games. Things like Dark Channel, Sabotage, and even Warp are missing, but the most interesting omission is Adrenaline Rush. The soldier's bread and butter is missing in this installment, and that is sadly because the single player is trying to mirror the multiplayer mechanically, thus removing the ability to have time slowing down, and streamlining the squadmate command system. You can no longer freeze the game to look, position, and direct squadmates to use specific abilities. While most may say this makes squadmates nothing more than meat shields, the AI is generally smart enough to use the proper moves to set up or detonate combos on targets you highlight, and outside of Insanity mode, for the most part, they stay alive. Some people may be disappointed to see that the multiplayer for the most part is the same, though the addition of the Strike Mission custom lobbies can add a lot of fun to it, but the lack of any way to communicate with your team aside from voice chat is ridiculous, seeing as teamwork can make or break a run. Even ignoring the obvious text chat that could be implemented on PC, a simple emote system could help both express moments of joy and to point out key targets and objectives instead of them getting blindsided by enemies insta-killing them from
No shields, how?
Teammate injured.
The core idea of this game is exploration, finding new planets, meeting new people, and generally being a pioneer. With that in mind, it's 50-50
Again.
Each playable planet feels different with their own environmental faults, like ambient radiation with no way to escape, or freezing cold that requires your character to warm up next to a heater. The Angara, being the only well-developed new race to interact with, is very disappointing when compared to the actual scale of the game. The amount of colonizable worlds, aka the open world areas, was also surprisingly small and actually caught me off guard. When I first saw the list of worlds, I thought it would be expanded the further I played the game, and sadly I was mistaken. Such a shame too, because as I said before, the first time you land on a planet you really feel like it's a new world. Making the worlds habitable for life is pretty satisfying. Every quest you do adds to a percentage until you hit a point where you can place a settlement at a predetermined location, and seeing a spot that was previously nothing but desert now home to several somewhat makeshift buildings is a good feeling. The scanning function is a great way to feel like an explorer while gaining interesting tidbits about the lore and points for crafting, but pulled me out of the experience whenever I wanted to learn about something and it ended up not being a valid target for the scanner. Luckily, these moments were few and far between, making the scanner an enjoyable little minigame. But aside from the exploration, Andromeda has one other core idea: actually being a Mass Effect game. And how well does it do this job? The core of any Mass Effect game is having choices and making decisions, and in this regard, it felt weak. The new dialogue system, while a good idea, feels even less rewarding than before. Paragon and Renegade became a staple of the series for a reason. They had two creatively different ways to solve any of the dialogues in the game. One of the best examples is the interrogation scene. Paragon could talk nicely and coax the information out of the suspect, but it took a while, and Renegade pulled out a gun to get the info in record time.
That may go down in history as the shortest interrogation ever.
In comparison, I never felt like my dialogue options mattered, nor did Ryder do anything interesting via dialogue in my playthrough. Quantity over quality, I guess, as you do get many more options to take in this game. And before I forget, we must talk about the real reason people play a Mass Effect game. Romancing aliens. And compared to previous games, it's 50-50 a fucking in. Anyways, much like how that one person advertised the game on Twitter, it does have TNA. When that became allowed by mainstream games, I don't know, not complaining, but the actual quality of the romances, and by that I mean the lead up to the big payoff, is more or less the same. Just pick the romance option every time and you're set. No innovation here from previous titles except for PB. She has you going on several simple quests on different planets to romance her, a real improvement that is not mimicked by any of the other romance options. And then there's the actual fucking. Despite what Bioware said, only 3 romances are anywhere near explicit. PB, Cora, and Jal have the longest and most detailed romance scenes in the game, while everyone else has some build up followed by a fade to black. Or for the non-main romance options, nothing but a fade to black, which is particularly shitty for any of the gay romance options, which are all non-main romances. This is particularly confusing as the previous Mass Effect titles had the non-main romances at least in the same ballpark of quality. In Andromeda, they feel like a genuine afterthought. Mass Effect Andromeda is quite the mixed bag when it comes down to it. Improvements and new ideas in some area, watered down mechanics and buggy moments in the others. The game leaves plenty of loose ends to hint at the start of a new trilogy or at least a sequel, which will disappoint anyone wanting a nice contained story without nagging questions lingering. The game is seriously lacking in polish, and despite not experiencing many bugs, I know there are plenty out there, so be warned, your experience can vary. Bioware's first shot at a space-themed open-world game was rough, but still enjoyable for the most part, and with a price of $59.99 at minimum, my final opinion of this game is wait. Not only for a sale on this one, but also for the bug fixes and DLCs to improve the experience. Maybe if it was cheaper, I would say it's a buy, as the exploration and combat is great fun, but at a top dollar price, there needs to be top dollar polish. But that's all I have to say. Leave a comment. Like I was gonna end without a final comparison. As much as a step forward in things like graphics and open combat, this game is equally a step back in storytelling and personality. Unlike the previous Mass Effects, I failed to grow attached to the characters, and this comes from a person who started the series with Mass Effect 2 and instantly fell in love with the cast. I do honestly feel that the technical bugs people harped on were exaggerated a bit, as playing on the PlayStation for Mass Effect 2 and 3, they were just as buggy as Andromeda, and I had no expectations for it to be any different. I may have grown numb to bugs in Bioware products. Who knows what kind of DLC they will release in the future, maybe they will do something amazing, but on release my final say as a veteran player is borrow. Find a friend who already has the game and mooch the fuck out of it, until you can decide whether you feel attached enough to buy it, then double back to my previous score and wait for a price drop. And now we have reached the actual end of this review. Leave in the comment section with your thoughts. Maybe you think Andromeda killed the series, or maybe you think it's the best thing since uncensored romance scenes on YouTube, and I'll see you guys next time. Seriously, how do people get away with that?